What's up guys, Landon here from the Full-Time Filmmaker team, and in this video we're going to be taking a quick look at the all-new DJI RSC 2 and see how it compares to its predecessor, the Ronin SC. Now both the new Ronins come in this awesome little case, so you can fold them up and pack them up pretty tightly. We'll go ahead and open this small pocket here first. So the model we have here is just the base model. It's not going to have the follow focus or the Raven Eye or whatever. It's just the basic necessities you would need for the RSC 2. So in this pocket, it looks like we have a taller quick release right here. So this is if you had a follow focus and you wanted to mount it, you could do it right here. In this pocket, we have some extra 1/4 inch screws. There we go. And then another one. This is if you have a heavy lens and you need to mount the lens support on it. In here we have the lens support. On the Ronin SC it is plastic, on the RS2 and on the original Ronin S it is a metal lens support. This looks like the exact same one they have on the Ronin SC, so nothing's changed there between the two. In here we have our quick release. So just like on the RS2 we have our little dovetail plate. It's actually an Arca Swiss plate, so we can slide that off. That goes directly on the camera. And then we have our Manfrotto style plate, the big one that slides directly on the gimbal. And you'll notice that on this one, this is the RSC2 plate, there's no teeth on it like we see on the RS2. Not a big deal, just kind of a luxury of the RS2, I guess. But yeah, everything else is the same between those two plates. Right here we have our tripod, and this is the exact same as the original Ronin SC. So it's made of plastic, still very durable, but plastic as opposed to metal like we see on the RS2 and the Ronin S. So there we go, that's everything on that side. Now let's get to the good part. Bam, there it is. Real quick, we have just a couple of cables here, a lot of different RSS cables for cameras, so you can hook your camera up to the gimbal itself. And then this right here, I assume this is for charging the RSC. It's a USB to USB-C cable. Now this is kind of trippy actually looking at this, because obviously normally your battery grip would be separate from the gimbal, but here it's all together and it fits all in one piece here in this case. So I'm gonna unlock that and we can actually click that in place, tighten it right here. I'm gonna go ahead and move this case out of the way. Now if we get the RS2 and the Ronin SC and we compare these two gimbals together, it feels like the RSC2 is honestly just a complete redesign of the Ronin SC, which makes sense. Obviously you want the RSC2 to match the RS2, just kind of be a lower tier version of the RS2, because honestly the Ronin SC has always felt a little bit flimsy to me, just not the most sturdy gimbal in the world. Parker even said it felt like a toy when he held it last year for the first time. So glad they got away with that. I don't think we need to focus on the differences between these two, because clearly the RSC2 is better. But between these two new gimbals right here, we can point out a few differences. First thing I notice is the RSC2 doesn't have those RSA ports that we see on the Ronin S2. It is still a NATO rail, so you could mount a handle or the briefcase handle that comes with the RS2 if you wanted to. The RSC2 also has the focus wheel that we see on the RS2. It has locking mechanisms. Strangely enough, the RSC2 has the little plate up here that can slide left and right, as well as the arm back here that can also slide left and right. And if you remember on my RS2 video, I was kind of disappointed because you couldn't slide your camera left and right up here, even though you could adjust the arm back here. And that was the main reason I couldn't actually balance a red on the RS2, is because they took away that feature. So I'm kind of confused why they brought it back to the RSC2, but either way it's there, so that helps with balancing just different sized cameras with different weight distributions on the RSC2. Another obvious difference between these two gimbals is obviously the displays. So on the RS2 you have that full color touchscreen, and on the RSC2 it's not the best display, if I'm being honest. It's kind of pixelated, just a very simple display so you can quickly glance and see your settings. And since it's not touchscreen, instead you have to use this little dial right here to adjust and change your settings. So kind of interesting. Would have loved a full color touchscreen, but obviously having some sort of screen is better than no screen. screen like we saw on the previous Ronin SC, so I can't really complain too much there. Now, I think what I've been most curious about with the new RSC2 is seeing if it can actually handle a big camera like the 1DX2, something that was clearly impossible on the original Ronin SC. So here I have the 1DX2 with a Sigma 50mm lens. I'm gonna rig this up and see if we can get it to balance. So the RSC2 has a payload capacity of 6.6 pounds, and this setup, the 1DX2 and the Sigma 50mm, is roughly 5 pounds. So as far as payload goes, I think the setup is just under the limit, but the way that the weight is distributed on this setup, I can't balance this tilt arm because it's too short. This is the same problem we were having while trying to balance the red on the original Ronin S. If we could extend the tilt arm just a tiny bit more, it would work. So unfortunately, it cannot balance the 1DX, but the fact that it's that close means that it can probably balance a lot of smaller DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. On the Ronin SC, you could only use tiny little lenses like the RF 35mm. Otherwise, the eyepiece of your camera would actually hit the back motor. So it was kind of just annoyingly small, but we're obviously all wondering, how is the stabilization on the RSC2? Let's go do some tests. Alright, so according to DJI, they've also given the RSC2 the new Titan stabilization algorithm, and it looks really good to me, a bit better than the original Ronin SC, and honestly indistinguishable from the RS2, so that makes this device a really good option if you're running a smaller setup and you don't need some of the bells and whistles from the RS2. This device is also compatible with Raven Eye. It has the super smooth option as well, Active Track 3.0, Force Mobile, and so on, so DJI doesn't seem to be holding back on any of the new software features that they introduced on the RS2. They've just taken away some minor design elements. So overall, I think DJI did a really good job simplifying this one and just giving it the most basic features that you'd expect on a gimbal so you can start shooting as fast as possible. And by the way, I did try using this gimbal in the weird position that they show in the launch video, and honestly, I'm not sure what the benefit of doing that really is. It's actually extremely uncomfortable to hold it like that since it makes the whole thing front heavy. Plus, you can't even set it down like that, and it tends to freak out when I try turning it on in that position. So not completely sure what the goal is there, except maybe it makes underslung mode easier. Not completely sure. There is a 1/4 inch thread that you can see once you open up the hinge, so maybe there'll be some more accessories for this down the road. And the hinge does make packing this device super convenient. It'll fold down to about 7 square inches, so it makes it just slightly more compact and portable than the RS2. Now overall, super intriguing design. I think DJI listened to a lot of the complaints about the original Ronin SC being too small and flimsy, so they beefed up this version and made it a lot more functional than the previous model. So if you're watching this, you probably want to know if this is the gimbal for you. And like I said, if you shoot on cameras smaller than the 1DX, which is a pretty large number of you, I'm sure, and you don't really care about some of those extra design features on the RS2, and you don't plan on upgrading to a bigger camera system in the near future, then I think you'd be pretty happy with this gimbal right here. Now, we obviously love doing gear reviews, and we know that good equipment like this can take you pretty far in your filmmaking career, but what's even more important are the skills behind the camera. So if you're serious about becoming a better filmmaker, check out our online course, Full-Time Filmmaker, where we teach you everything we know about succeeding in this industry. We also have a completely free 1-hour filmmaking training where we give you our top 10 tips for creating cinematic videos, plus we give you an inside look of our full course. So if you're interested, hit the link up here or in the description down below if you want to check that out. But that pretty much wraps up this video. If you guys have any further questions, please let us know.